Welcome once again to the event, guys. Once again, I want to appreciate everybody spending time and taking time out of their schedule to show up, help students empower their voice, I guess, as our project our project says. Today's UVoice presentation, or the power panel, as we like to call it, our main goal or our main topic is to understand your mental health and your academic goals, and utilizing the available resources on your student campus or whatever university you go to for your benefit. Here is the schedule in case you guys need a quick refresher. We did originally plan to start around 6:10, but just to give people some time to show up, we will be pushing to 6:15. I hope you guys are situated, you understand all the rules, and there is the land acknowledgement we have to quickly do. So we'd like to acknowledge that the land we are standing on today, or the land that we are presenting on today, is the territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of Credit. Sorry about that. The Chippewa, the Honduras, and the Wendat peoples of Canada. And they are in many forms of the First Nations regarding to the Inuits, the Métis people, and others. We also acknowledge that Toronto was covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of Credit, the Williams Treaty signed with multiple other Indigenous folk, and that we respect their ground and that we acknowledge their presence here. So as I said earlier, the main question for today's event is, what was the relationship between your health and your studies, and in regards to utilizing the available resources on campus?
Before we start, we should introduce our panelists for today. So we will start off with Ujwal. Ujwal, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello? And what are you doing now after your undergraduate studies?
Hi everybody, my name is Ujwal Manta. I survived UFT, much like you guys are doing right now. And I did a double major in studio and sociology, which was a wild ride. And currently, right now, I'm working as a social media and website coordinator and marketing something. It's really unclear. I really do all of their digital marketing. I don't think they know what's going on, but I do that for them while I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for my master's and eventually hopefully become an artist, which is its own adventure. So that's me. Yeah, I'll pass the mic over to Janine, who will pass it again, or
You can go ahead and pick a person and pass it on if you like.
who's next to me? Selena.
Hello, everyone. My name is Selena, and I also survived U of T. I did a double major in human biology and population health, and I'm currently doing my master's at U of T in the Department of Nutritional Sciences. It's a thesis-based master's, so I'm doing research on school food programs in Canada. It's a big conversation happening within the federal government, so the implementation of a national school food program. So I hope to generate evidence to inform a national school food program that is inclusive and equitable. And after I finish my master's, I hope to go to med school. So that's like my long journey and or my end goal as well. And so I'd like to pass it on to Victoria.
Hey everyone, I'm Victoria Merritt. Seems to be the theme. I also survived U of T. I did a double major in psychology and sociology. Currently, I am taking a break, which feels really nice. This upcoming May, I'm going to be going and taking the accelerated paralegal program at Seneca. Hopefully after that will be law school. I will pass it on to Imran.
Okay, so my name is Imran Bacchus. Much like my peers in the chat, I also survived U of T. I did a double major in sociology and health policy. And after my undergraduate degree, I pursued 5 business-based certificates with the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. And I currently now work as an area manager for Amazon. I hope to be here for at least 2 to 4 years, and then I will be eligible for an MBA, which I hope to do at the University of Toronto as well. So I will pass it to, I believe that's everyone.
Yeah, thank you for everyone for introducing yourself. So once again, I'll pass it on to Abdul Bari, who will start our panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I apologize for any delays or any interruptions. So as I did mention earlier, our main question or our main topic that we like to tackle is the relationship students have between their health, specifically their mental health, and their studies. If I may, I'd like to let you guys know, you all may raise your hand or continue off someone else's point if they have spoken before. This is an open discussion, and if we feel like, or if most of us feel like we can move on to the next topic, I will let you guys know. To start off, in regards to our topic of today, in what ways, we'd like to ask, in what ways does your health affect your studies, or in what ways does your studies affect your health? Ujwal, if you mind, I'd like to pick on you because you did start us off. And if you do make points and anyone would like to interject or add on, please feel free to do so.
Sure, awesome. So basically, you're asking me how my studies affected my health and how my health affected my studies.
Correct.
Essentially, yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure every one of us has pulled at least one all-nighter, and that's a conservative estimate. Apparently, that's considered normal. And there's something about going back from like your classes and then bragging to your friends and roommates about how, oh, I only slept 2 hours last night, compared to, that being a mark of honor. So let's just say, yes, it greatly affected my health. But then that's also what people expected to do. I a lot of sleepless nights, didn't eat as well as I should have at some points, and definitely got more stressed than I ought to have done to myself. But I guess that's what you sign up for, which is not great, which is, I guess, why this panel is so important. But yeah, what do you guys think? And when your hand is still raised.
No, it is. I want to follow up after.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I would definitely say that the biggest, I'd say like issue between like studies and health is lack of sleep, especially with a lot of students. Because I mean, everyone waits till the last minute to start their assignments, and they spend several hours doing it. I would say to prioritize the amount of sleep you get, just because sleep is important, and when you don't get enough of it, that leads to poor mental health overall, but also physical issues as well. Heart problems, indigestion, like who knows what, right? And that just leads to a worse quality overall.
And I just wanted to add on to both of what you were saying. I speak to my experiences, especially in first year, when things are especially difficult because you're kind of adjusting to the new work routine of university life. And I distinctly remember when I was like in the first, like introductory to chemistry class, and I was falling behind in one of my courses. And I remember like for a midterm, I thought it would be a smart idea to just pull an all-nighter and like study all night. And I'm like, okay, like if I study all night, I review all the content, then I should be good. But by the time I did the exam, I was so anxious that I think I blanked out. And I'm like, wow, I think studying and reviewing content is just as important as getting a good night's sleep. And if anything, like if getting a good night's sleep means that you're gonna maybe not review one PowerPoint slide, I think that's worth it, because it's essentially like a feedback loop, right? You don't get enough sleep, you don't get enough sleep, you do poorly on an exam, and then you think you're gonna have to do another all-nighter, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. And then hopefully once you recognize that, you create like strategies to prevent that from happening in like your later exams as you start adjusting to the university life. But yeah, I think I would just describe it as like a feedback loop if I were to explain the relationship between like my health and my studies.
So I think to add on to that, you made a really good point about how like in first year you had gone to one of your exams and like almost blanked out basically. And it actually brought up something that I remembered in first year as well. I was taking, I think it was the intro statistics course, and everybody was like really stressed about it. there was people that actually got up and were like, I can't do this, and walked out of the exam. The kid in front of me, like sitting in front of me, he actually like fainted. It got really intense. And I think that maybe not just U of T specifically, but definitely at U of T, they were really under a lot of pressure just because it's U of T, it has that name. We're expected to live up to that. And I think that really overall has affected students' mental health.
In my second year, in one of my art classes, we were supposed to put up a text-based artwork on the walls, and one of them put up this thing called U of Tears. They put it up in the admin office. That was the only artwork that the university requested. When I say requested, they requested us to take down, and they took it down when we weren't looking. And I was like, damn, that's the way you want to deal with this entire mental health crisis, because it is a crisis. And I don't know why they make it seem like the end of the world, because ultimately when I left university and I realized that, oh, none of them knew what they were doing either. It's just like, now you're done and no one's like bothering you anymore, which is kind of what we're going for. But also, like, you have the rest of your life, so you shouldn't really sacrifice your life just to get through 4 years. You need to kind of pace yourself in a way. Almost that it's almost like when you go through high school, you can kind of just brute force it. But if you're not interested in what you're learning about in university, you will burn out very fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I want to speak to that burnout. One of my professors, I think like he usually this is the first time I experienced this, but during one of our lectures, he like turned off the PowerPoint and he's like, we're not going to talk about the content anymore. And he literally just asked the entire class, like, what do you value? And he's like, it could be anything. Like, if you value making a lot of money, like that's still a value, that's not wrong or right. He's like, if you value being close to home, if you value having like not being in school for a long time, he just essentially told us to list out all of our values, and then kind of related to like what we were doing in school, right? Because I think like in every like university institution, or even like in life in general, whether it's like jobs or at any stage, like we're gonna feel that pressure, right? And I think one of the ways that we could like alleviate that pressure is seeing like why that pressure is worth it, or why you're willing to go through it, and how it possibly relates to your values and like the bigger goals that you have in your life. And also like just acknowledging like, yeah, sometimes I'm not going to be able to meet all of my like all of my commitments, and acknowledging like that's okay as well. And like sometimes you do have to take a step back. And if you can't meet your obligations today, I think if you're a good person to other people and you communicate that, then like that's good enough. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about that aspect. But
I appreciate the points all of you made. I know many of you have mentioned specific events and episodes where people have passed out, fainted, expressed their stress physically because of their low mental health. In regards to that, I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Why do you think students have this tendency to prioritize their studies, their academics, over their mental health? Why do you think that is? Imran, you have your hand up. You may speak.
Yeah, I would say it's mainly just due to the like all the almost like scarcity around being in university, right? Because the time that you have to commit is huge, right? But there's the idea that if you fall behind in your class, you can either take it again, or the soonest you could take it again is in another 4 months, right? That's a lot of time you've wasted in the meantime. Also the money. But also, if you do bad in your class the first time and you take it again, that bad class will still bring down your GPA, and that will have effects more down the line if you try applying to grad school or something, right? I know that other institutions, like they have things like that where if you take the class again, you do better, then you can, then your worst one gets dropped effectively. U of T doesn't do that, and I think that people are just scared about messing up their entire future simply by doing, bad in one course.
You brought up the money thing, which I think also plays a significant role in it. Like, I'm a Canadian student, so I only pay maybe 10 grand a year, which is still a lot, but international students come and they pay 100,000 more. I'm not sure the exact number. So when you're spending that much money, you feel like you need to do good. You need to make it worth the amount that you're spending, which sometimes takes away from our mental health.
As an international student, I can second that. We pay a fair bit more than 100,000 for our entire thing, for the entire 4 years. And the fact remains, like, my parents were very, very nice about it. Even when I switched to arts, in fact, it was them who encouraged me to switch to the arts, which is not something very common for brown parents to do. Switching over from science to the arts. That's a common stereotype and joke for a reason. But my parents thought that would be great for me because they've always been great like that. But I also realized every time I looked into a course going into it, I was like, this entire course is like almost $5,000. It always used to weigh on your mind. And I was fortunate enough that I enjoyed the subject matter and I could kind of get into it enough so that it didn't feel that too difficult to me at times. But that's not the case for people who are in courses that they have to take, but they're not really interested in. And that's unfortunately a very common thing. And, it's also the culture. For whatever reason, we're expected to think that we've worked towards university our entire life. And then we're like, yeah, this is the final stretch. After this, we can rest. But after this is just open ocean. We're just expected to keep swimming. Like after this is when our life starts and we don't have the energy left. We drown then, but that's just so cool. So it's like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess to summarize everything everyone has said, like I resonate with it all. It's like money, time, and pressure. Like money, first of all, it's expensive. You don't want to waste your money on courses because like you failed or anything like that. And then time, you think that you have to finish in 4 years or like everyone else is doing this. And it's like, oh, like what if I'm here forever kind of thing? Or like you have other plans and you just want to finish right away. And then like the pressure, like there's your parents that are like rooting for you or like pressuring you to do certain courses or take certain routes, or even like the people around you and like shame, like, oh, if I fail this course and like what are the other people going to think if I have to retake it? So I guess it's just all of those reasons combined. And then in our mindset, we just think like, oh, like our health is at the bottom of the priorities, our priority list. So
I think it's also pressure to pursue higher education. Like I'm someone who wants to go into teaching, so I only need a bachelor's of education degree. But because I go to U of T, every other person I meet wants to go to medical school, law school. They all want to pursue masters and PhDs. So now I feel pressure to want to do that as well, even though I don't need to for the job I want. So I guess it's just constant comparing myself to others. That's another pressure with the school.
I think many people, regardless if they're a graduate or an undergraduate, can resonate with a lot of the stuff that's been said. If I may ask, why do you think any of you, specifically the panelists, have neglected your mental health or your physical health as well? If not you, maybe somebody you know. Do you guys know why, or do you have any theories as to why you or a student you know might have neglected their health?
I would say, would you like to go first, Lynn?
No, you can go ahead.
All right. Well, I would say just the investment that you've already made, right? Because I feel like mental health problems don't arise at the beginning. I feel like they happen somewhere near the end or in the middle of, your be it the semester or just even pursuing your degree in general. And by that point, it's really difficult to stop or take a break when you've already invested however much time and money into it, right? Because effectively, if you don't finish your degree, then all the money you've put in at that point was effectively wasted, right? So yeah, I mean, I'd say just that. It's the fear of, wasting all the time and money already.
I think like for me, over time, I think you become desensitized. So you don't realize that you're neglecting your health anymore because it's so normal for you to have, again, all-nighters. So normal for you to like skip meals or drink so much caffeine and things like that. And also, I guess in my mindset, sometimes I would think to myself, Selena, you just have to stay up late for this many days because like the exam is just this one. It's just going to be this one day, and like if you work hard for all those days, but you don't realize you have multiple exams, and then I guess that's the start of like your habit, right? You're going to start doing these you're going to start, I guess, like not prioritizing your health anymore because it's kind of like the norm when you intended it not to be the norm. So I think that's like another reason why.
I also realized that when you have other, like when you're neurodivergent and you have other mental illnesses, it can kind of come together to form a perfect storm. Because like I was like, I know I have ADHD, which leads to very interesting situations when you're in university, because it's almost like either you can't focus on anything or you focus on something so hard that you forget to eat. And it's often, sometimes I've realized that the only way to kind of deal with that is treat myself as like I'm my own zookeeper almost. So I have to treat myself like an animal. I have to get those things. Like I have to get basic things checklisted in my head just so that I can remember to do them. And that's hard enough. I can only imagine how it would be for people who are suffering from all kinds of different things. Because when you come to university, it's not like grade school or elementary school. You don't have the regenerative emotional ability of a small child to just forget about things. You're carrying years of past traumas, past stories, past memories, all those things to unpack while you're also trying to figure out how your future is going to look like. That's a lot of pressure for anyone. And I feel like we don't look at it well enough in our society.
I think that that's also kind of the culture at U of T. They don't really offer a lot of mental health support. And for the ones that they do, they don't really seem to be promoted, at least to the extent that they could be. It's been getting better, but a lot of that has to do with like student started programs. Like UVoice, for example, that was started by students, not necessarily a program at U of T that was like, oh, we need to do this to help students. And yeah, I think they just really don't focus on it enough or as much as they could.
That's so true. And anytime you go and speak to Health and Wellness Center, for example, and say you guys need more counselors or you give constructive criticism, they love to throw it back to students. So they'll say, you guys are the ones paying tuition and you guys don't want your tuition costs to rise. So for that reason, we can't hire more counselors. And they will try to refer us to apps like MySSP, but it's not very user friendly. So it's a bit weird because for a school that says mental health is so important, they're doing so little. And like Victoria said, it's this sort of organization and other U of T student clubs that are supporting students.
If I may ask, knowing what all of you know about the degradation of mental health, the degradation of physical health, and the lack of support, not just U of T, but other universities tend to provide for the students, how do you think we could practice self-care while doing the best we could in our studies? How do you think we can manage both of them at the same time?
Can you rephrase the question?
Knowing what you guys know, how do you think we as students can practice self-care while doing the best in our studies? So many of us have mentioned instances where students have fainted or passed out during an examination or a presentation. How do you think how do you think a student can better manage their mental health, their physical health, and their studies at the same time?
I think I would suggest to get involved with the community in any capacity. I remember first year was the most challenging year for me, and all I really did was go to UTSC and then go home, study, and then repeat. And then that changed for me in second year. I got involved with the wellness peer program. I did like some mentorship thing, and then in my mind it was like, oh, like I don't have like the capacity to do it, like I don't have the time to do it. But giving myself time to actually be involved in the clubs at U of T actually ended up helping me in the long run. It gave me another purpose to be at UTSC besides my academics, and it gave me like a support system, connecting with other students, like beyond my courses. And so that's like one thing I would recommend for self-care, just getting involved in the community.
Okay. I would say to have to plan, have a lot of structure in your studies, right? For example, maybe don't wait till the last minute to do your assignments or your review for things, right? Say maybe, on Thursday I'm going to review for 2 hours, then after that I'm going to take a break and figure out what I'm going to do, and just follow a routine. Don't wait until things pile up to the very end to try to tackle it all at once. It's better to do a little bit at a time to get it done than to do it all at once when it's overwhelming.
And for people who I think might relate to the ADHD struggle, structure may not work for you if you have certain conditions. Like if you can't seem to make a planner, like I have 6 planners right next to me. I bought each of them thinking I was going to change my life. Each time there's a reason there's 6 of them, and there's probably going to be a 7th one in a month when I go through that phase again. But I never look at them, so that's pointless. All I'm saying is that sometimes you got to lose a battle to win the war, and sometimes that really comes down to like, if you don't have the energy to do something at that time, maybe it's fine not to do it. Sure, it might feel like the end of the world at the time, but trust me, it's going to keep spinning. You just got to figure out where your priorities are. And if you like it, usually these things work out, because ultimately it's either the fact that, I guess one thing that really helps is keeping an accountability partner, learning how to ask for help, getting other people in on this, because ultimately you don't have to do this alone. And I feel like many people who want to do this alone end up like stop doing it alone as well. So might as well do it with other people who are either in your stream or just who care about you. That's something, bring them in on at the discussion table. Yeah.
I actually agree with what he's saying. One thing that really helped me was knowing that I'm being supported. So I used institutional resources, but like I said before, there's a lot of gaps in our education system and in those resources available at Health and Wellness. So I would speak up about those issues. So one thing I'm doing this year is to try to get the Scarborough Campus Students Union to have petting zoos for students, especially during midterm season. And I guess another thing that I wish I told myself when I was younger was to be kind to myself and to forgive myself. So like he said, you can lose one battle, but you don't need to lose the entire war. So I guess remembering to be disciplined. And one way that I did that was to have like-minded, supportive friends, but then also go to professionals. I can't just rely on my friends all the time.
I think something else that's also really important is to still make time to focus on your other hobbies and other things that you like to do without feeling bad about it. Like, for example, before U of T, I used to read all the time. He'd hand me a book and I'd finish it in a day or two. But then I got to U of T and there was piles of textbooks and articles and different things that I had to go through. And I'd get to the point where I'd feel guilty about sitting down and doing something for myself because there was so much other work to do. And then you end up stressing yourself out to the point where, sure, you're sitting down and you're doing the work, but you're not retaining it. It's not what you could be doing. If you'd taken the 10, 20, 30, however many minutes and just sat down, relaxed, and so did something you enjoy.
Yeah, I just want to speak to like the whole guilt with not being productive. I sometimes feel that too when I'm like, oh, like I didn't get everything that I wanted to get done today. And then you just start feeling so down. But I think like I really like that the quote you said, like you sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. And like sometimes it's okay that you didn't finish things, and it's okay that like you didn't check off everything off your to-do list kind of thing. Yeah, you just got to be kind to yourself, and sometimes you got to be unproductive to be productive. So yeah, I really like everything that everyone has shared. I feel like I really needed to hear this today.
One thing that really helps me, I guess, is remembering that I'm actually really close to finishing than I think. Instead of thinking it as like, oh, I'm only an undergrad and I have all these years to go, I try to remind myself, hey, I only have like 25% of my degree left to do. So I guess knowing that in small chunks, I'm really close to my goal.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for sharing. I'd like to quickly take a moment before asking the next question to quickly thank everybody. I know everyone is expressing a lot of things that stress them out, both physically and mentally. It might not seem we're suffering on the inside. Everybody here has very good composure, but we know what's going on in our heads better than anybody else. We know what's going on with our own lives. So if any of this was difficult for you to share, if anything here was a bit too serious, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk about it. The next few questions might give you an opportunity to vent your frustration in a way. I'd like to ask, in regards to everything said here, I think the answer is going to be the negative. Do you think the university acknowledges the connection between student health and their studies? I feel like I'm going to get a unanimous answer here.
I heard a fact, and the fact that UTSC apparently has the best mental health program across the 3 campuses is like the fact that that's the best is horrible. Like if UTSC is the best at mental health, how is St. George and Mississauga, like how do they still have people? Because
it is so bad over there. You have to wait, like our students will literally line up and you have to wait months for an appointment. Here at least we have the emergency you call in the morning type of thing, and you can possibly speak to them within that day or the next 2 days. But over there you'll be waiting months on end, and it feels like you're a number, like you only matter if you're suicidal.
And even then you matter only because it'll be a liability if you die.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, adding to that, I read this statistic, I think it was about a year ago, so that it may have changed, but U of T is currently the number one, like the top university for student suicide.
Yeah.
Which is really morbid, but I think that says a lot about how they handled that and how we're treated as students with our mental health and just how much the problem's ignored.
I think what it is as well is they don't treat them, or like they focus more on like education and production of knowledge. They don't really look at like the human aspect of it, right? And I mean, I hate to say this. I know they say like education is not a business. I mean, I question that. But at the end of the day, like they always say, it's more expensive, it's costly, your tuition's gonna go up if they have more services, and they just don't want to do that, right? I think they should stop looking at it like that and look at it more from like a human perspective.
Going back to what Victoria said, you know what's interesting? The U of T campus police actually only counts student suicide statistics if the student successfully died on campus. So if someone committed suicide in their house, for example, because of school-related mental health reasons, the school's actually not going to consider that in their annual suicide reports. So the numbers are actually very skewed.
I mean, Dura mentions a really good point. I actually did not know about that. I know I'm not one of the panelists, but I recall seeing a large post from a student page from U of T in general. And I don't quite remember the exact number, but I remember it saying that U of T spends approximately $20,000 to their mental health awareness program. And this was from the years 2019 to 2021 when those 4 students ended up committing suicide on campus. And with that knowledge in mind, it is very dark of me, but I did kind of giggle on the inside because to me it seemed very pathetic for them to spend that much money and have this bad of a mishap occur at their doorstep.
I remember a student did commit suicide in 2019, and instead of the university going and spending money on preventative measures, like how they teach us in public health, it's best to avoid the issue to begin in the first place, such as getting more counselors. The university decided to start trying to build that building like suicide proof, but students are always going to find other ways to go like commit suicide. Like someone might just come on campus and overdose on medicine or something.
She's right. On the St. George campus, yeah.
Like people will find creative ways to kill themselves. So I don't understand how making a building suicide proof is going to help.
It's liability.
And even if you look at the way, like the demographics of the suicides, it was largely among certain minority groups and people of color, and like especially international students. Imagine the trauma that you might have to go through already going to a new country, going and perhaps feeling isolated because the University of Toronto is not great with cultural integration. They don't have a great, they don't have good interpretations or good ways to make language and learning accessible. In many cases, it's like frustrating for both the instructor and the student because the student comes from an entirely different cultural background and the instructor doesn't know how to reach them. So it's ultimately both of them just like nothing's going through. And then they spend all their energy trying to make it so that it's difficult for the person to commit suicide, but not actually solving the issue. I mean, it kind of reminds me of what the city of Toronto did with the homeless encampment. Instead of trying to figure out ways to put them in affordable housing, they just paid a lot of police people to like move them, but then that cost more than it would have cost to give them houses. So it's like, what's your real priority here? Yeah.
That's so true. A lot of these issues are like band-aid issues. And even if you are one of the lucky ducks who gets to see a counselor every 2 weeks, which is like usually how much they cap it at, instead of increasing how often you can see your counselor, they kind of point fingers and they say, well, you're one of the lucky ones who gets to see a counselor more often, which just puts more pressure on the student.
I think something that's like kind of in line with that is a lot of us get told to just go to accessibility and they'll help you. But first of all, that's not what accessibility is for. It's not supposed to be a mental health support. They're supposed to help you with academically reaching out to professors and finding other means of support. And I know this is kind of a weird way to put it, but not all of us are lucky enough to have a form or a document or something that proves that we can register with accessibility. And just because you're not officially diagnosed as depressed or with anxiety doesn't mean that you still don't have these problems. And I think that that's not understood.
Victoria, that's so true. Just waiting to get diagnosed takes several months at this school. And like you said, if you don't have a valid medical certificate, they make it really hard to get the supports that you need. The other thing too is they love referring students from place to place. Like academic advising will refer you to a counselor at health and wellness, and then health and wellness will refer you to accessibility, and then accessibility will say, we don't offer those supports, go to somebody else. I wish it was more interdisciplinary, where they had counselors from health and wellness work at different stations in the school. And again, they teach us that in school, that we should be interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary in our learning. So at least it would be cool if they exemplified that.
They claim to try doing that though, but it's only like once every 2 weeks. So I mean, okay.
If anyone else has anything else to add or not, I'd like to move on to our next question. One of our last questions, by the way. How, in regards to what everybody said, with regards to staying connected on campus, how important is it to stay connected to the UTSC community for your health and for your studies, whether it's with the students of the university or with the professors and the resources on campus?
I'd say it's very important. Just because if there's like, especially with like peers in general, like if they're going through the same thing you are, then they'll understand, or well, then you get a sense of, camaraderie, and you know that you're not, alone in your I don't want to say your struggle, but I mean, I feel like everyone struggles in some way, right? And like just knowing that you're not alone, like that helps a lot. Plus, like, they might be able to share information with you that, you might otherwise not have access to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, networking with the right people can help you get access to other resources that you might need. And I guess just knowing that other students are experiencing or have experienced similar situations and they can sympathize and empathize. I guess just knowing that someone can validate how I feel really helps. And honestly, I don't know how I would have completed so many classes and even made it to fourth year if it wasn't from the supports that I've received from academic advising, or the supports that I've received from accessibility or the equity office or the women's and trans center. They're all actually super helpful. It's just really hard to get support regularly.
I mean, I can also speak to that. I think at UTSC, I know of a lot of resources that could be really helpful to students and to support their mental health, and to get that sense of community. But I also acknowledge that it's hard to start or to know where to start, to access the support. And one of the ways that you can start is just by talking to someone. I think that's how I found out about a lot of the opportunities and resources at UTSC. I was just talking to my fellow peers, or like if professors did presentations during class, or if they invited other students who were like leaders to present in class. And that's why I say like it's just so important. And I understand that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, everything has shifted online and has made it even harder for us to learn about these resources, because we lose that like person to person contact. But I think when things start to shift back in person, that's something that we could leverage to support other students at all U of T campuses.
We also need more international students to be asked and given a say in the administration of the student unions, and also in general, the student populace. And also, from all intents and purposes, from what I've been hearing about whatever's going on in the SASU, someone has to go down and clean up Everything, because frankly, that's just setting us back a couple decades. I don't know what's going on. I don't presume to understand what's going on, so I won't speak too much about it. But if I have to keep hearing about how there's another year of just weirdly intense politics, when really, I mean, I get it. The SCSU is probably a very good approximate simulation of how real world politics goes. Nothing gets done. People scream every 4 years, but that's not the point, is it? We're supposed to make it better. So I hope that in the coming years, somehow someone steps in and cleans that up so that actual things get done. Which is
That's so true. The school has money to squander, and they just they point at fingers. Keep going. Sorry, I cut you off, but like what you're saying is so true.
Oh no, you didn't cut me off. I was just gonna drink water from the tumbler because too lazy to get a glass. You keep talking.
If no one else has any points to add, I'd like to give a few minutes. I'd like to give you guys an opportunity, you folks, an opportunity to throw in any last comments or remarks about the questions we talked about, the topics we talked about.
Regarding student mental health, you know what would be super helpful? I know professors aren't required to come and listen to me when I'm upset about school, and I know that typically what they do is they'll tell you, hey, maybe you need to go speak to a counselor at whatever station that they recommend. I wish that professors receive training on like student mental health. Because I did have a professor where I asked to be accommodated and she told me I'm just taking the easy way out. And that was yeah. And it just hurt so bad. And I was in my first year when this happened. Like, that's not the sort of response a professor should be giving you.
It's weird almost because I like from a sociological perspective, it's like we're at kind of like the intersection of two different generations. One generation that's grown up believing in the stoic way of dealing with these things, and one generation that has realized that we're actually human beings and that we deserve accommodation. Like, I mean, it's a battle that eventually will win out in one way. I mean, I don't know, the world's going crazy right now. Who knows how the status quo is going to change, but I feel like that training would be a very good idea. I feel like, forget just teachers, I feel like every employee in the university should get the chance to understand how people's minds work.
You know what? That's so true.
Yeah, I agree.
That should be like a mandatory thing when you come to U of T. You should get mental health training. I know the START training that we had to do for UVoice with Janine and health and wellness was so helpful.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of training, but I don't think it's mandated. I don't have much knowledge on that, but I think there's like also IAR training, like the Identify, Assist, Refer, as well. START training, as you said. And I guess like training in general to respond to, like in your case, Dara, like respond more empathetically, because we're all dealing with things and like we all have our challenges, and like especially during that critical time you said happened like earlier in your university career. I would hope that they're more understanding of the transition that students are going through, and it's not necessary. And like I don't like that. I like the whole belief that it's like, oh, like you're just taking the easy way out, because that's not the case, right? And I think that's like maybe the core of some of like the problems and the pressure that students are facing. So yeah.
I think the other thing too is a lot of them need to realize that we didn't sign up to do school online during a pandemic that we didn't know was going to happen. And I feel like if anything, they're just throwing more work at us sometimes.
Yeah.
And not just for accessibility registered students, but I wish the university was more accommodating towards students in general. So if they lessen the weight of final exams just to reduce stress, or if midterms weren't just 2 or 3 weeks before finals, that would be super helpful. Like I have a midterm tomorrow, even though my first final exam is the second week of April.
Yeah, that's just messed up.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like I feel like midterms should be in the mid of the semester.
Any other final comments or remarks?
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's the thing. There's also one other thing that I think people, I know that there's this very common narrative that people come up and say where like, oh, you shouldn't complain about how it is here because like back home, especially for international students, it's much worse. And they're like, and I'm like, I understand that. And to be completely honest, for the longest time, I thought this was amazing. I thought that this was like the best that an institution could get. Like I was like, first of all, first year was so nice and easy. People listened. We had counselors. Those things were like unheard of back home. And then I realized, yeah, that's perfect. And now, after taking sociology and after understanding the way that this entire kind of system works together, I'm like, yeah, it is much worse back home. That doesn't mean it can't get better here. We shouldn't use like excuses or like incompetent systems around the world to justify why we shouldn't work on ourselves right now. Like I feel like that's just a natural self-help thing that people say for individuals. You shouldn't say that, oh, just because someone else is doing bad doesn't mean you can excuse yourself. Why doesn't that work for societies as well? Like, makes sense. And I feel like that would, it's almost kind of necessary to look at yourself as someone who can grow. I feel like that's something that U of T needs to take into account.
Yeah, they always tell us to perspective take, but that doesn't mean that our issues are not valid.
Imran, Selena, Victoria, do you three have any final comments, remarks you'd like to interject?
Final comments. Well, I would say that, you know, it's like every now and then someone should audit the services that they actually provide just to see like what they have, right? Because, you know, it's one thing to say that we provide, like, let's just say we provide mental health, you know, services, right? I'm not sure if you could see that services background. But like, what does that really mean? I mean, you could say like, oh, we provide mental health services and you have like one counselor. Like that doesn't mean it's available. That doesn't mean it's, you know, people can actually use it. That might not cater to a number of things, but it will still count as a check mark. Like, oh, we provide something, right? So they should be held more accountable, I think.
They need to be more transparent. He's right. So they have, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe maximum 24 counselors, probably less than that. But there's 14,000 students on campus, and not all of those counselors are available every day. That's like one counselor per 1,000 students, which is just ridiculous.
And kind of adding on to that about the advocating. I think while students are getting better at it, we're starting programs, we're starting to speak up about it. I think it's really the time to just push the university and make it known that we need this to happen, that we need more mental health supports, that what they're doing is not good enough. And I think the more we bombard them from every direction, the better it would be.
I've received more supports from student clubs and non-professionals than I have from the actual university's institutions. And I think other students could agree.
Janine, do you have anything you'd like to share or express? I know you are one of the hosts here, but you do have authorization to express your opinion.
Well, I think everyone has their valid points, and I'm very much thankful that they were able to share their experiences. But Yeah, I would just have to say that thank you to everyone for coming today. And I hope those who see this learn something and know that finding your resilience is unique to a person, their journey, and important to understand their own health and goals. With that said, I hope you, as graduates and all students, know how resilient you are when it comes to pursuing your goals and personal growth.
Well, thank you for that. At this point, we'd like to allow everyone to take a quick 5-10 minute break